and welcome back. Joining me on the line now is Richard Maybury, the president of Henry Madison Research and publisher of U.S. and World Early Warning Report. Richard's articles have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and other mainstream publications. Richard, welcome to the Power and Market Report.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here, Albert. And incidentally, you do such a great job. I want to give you a pat on the back. There's very few commentators that give the American people a view of things from the standpoint of the system of liberty. It's usually Democrats or Republicans or liberals or conservatives, and it's really nice that people can hear a viewpoint based on liberty. So I personally thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I just read your October newsletter the other day, and as usual, it's a great newsletter. And this time you talk a little bit about hedge funds, and I think that we can, sort of the disappointing performance of hedge funds recently, I think we can expand this discussion to money managers in general. And what you say is that there are actually four factors that are determining factors in the success of an investment, and that a lot of these institutional money managers only look at one. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the four factors are the financial ones, the economic ones, and then the geopolitical and the military ones. And you can find lots of people who are very skilled at the financial. They're very well trained, and they really understand the nuts and bolts of finance a great deal. But the other three factors, the economic, geopolitical, and military, are really given short shrift, and most of them know practically nothing about them, and which is a tremendous tragedy, because I think everybody can pretty much see nowadays that the markets are moved much more by the economic, geopolitical, and military events than they are by the financial ones. The markets are not free markets anymore. They are political institutions. They're very heavily politicized by the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and the IMF, and who knows, all the other central banks and all. So you really have to understand what's going on in real economics and real geopolitics and real military events if you want to plan your investments in a way that is let's say in tune with reality. And you and I have talked many times before about the economic angle on this alone. Almost everybody who goes through college now is taught Keynesian economics, which is the economics that governments use to control their economies. Well, if your financial advisor is using the Keynesian economics to plan your finances, then it's logical to expect that your finances are going to do about as well as the economy does. And I always ask, do you want that? You really need an economic model that's much more in tune with reality. And the only one that's still standing is called the Austrian model. That's from the economics of Nobel laureate Friedrich Hayek and his teacher Ludwig von Mises. And that to me is a far more realistic view of economics and has a far better track record of prediction and producing profits than the Keynesian model. But everybody's taught the Keynesian because that's what the government uses. So that's a really big factor right there. And I would say to people, if you're looking for a financial advisor, one thing to talk about is what brand of economics does that advisor use, and don't be pushed off and made to feel that you're just ignorant and you really shouldn't be talking about such things. Hammer it home. You need to know what brand of economics they're using, and if they're using the same one the government's using, which is the Keynesian, look out.
Yeah, and you're pretty much 90% or more guaranteed to get exactly that. When they do consider the economics, it's misguided. Oftentimes they just neglect it completely. Yeah. And as far as geopolitics and military is concerned, that is almost always neglected.
Yeah, part of that is that there are very few people that have much experience in the military anymore, and the ones who don't tend to shun it. You can go back to like the 1950s and 60s, and even people who'd never been in the military had some respect for it, and therefore had some curiosity about it, and they learned about military things. But they don't anymore. And military events are very important in determining what happens to your money. So, an awful lot of financial advisors are totally ignorant about what the military is and what it does and how it affects the economy. And so, one of the things you can watch for is the language that the advisor uses when talking about military stuff. I've noticed that the word battleship, the news media has warped that word to mean any kind of a warship. Warship and battleship are used synonymously, and a lot of financial advisors use it that way. Well, a battleship, really, if you know something about the Navy, a battleship is an awesome ship. It's used to be the most powerful ship on the water, and a whole different thing than most other warships. So misuse of the word battleship can be a tip-off that this guy, or woman who is your advisor doesn't know anything about the military forces that are affecting the economy and your investments.
Now, certainly the lack of consideration in these factors is perhaps one explanation of the underperformance. And I just put up this graph for the viewers. You can see this is the Economist article that you reference. Shows basically the 5-year moving average performance of hedge funds has been going down for several years now. Now they have it at less than 5%. I think I have another chart that shows pretty much the same thing, and at the same time the S&P has been outperforming. Now perhaps the reason that you give is perhaps one explanation, but you also hint at another one, and that is the fact that before, hedge funds were the domain of very, very smart investors. And I've noticed that since about the year 2000, the number of hedge funds has exploded. Now, certainly they all can't be of the same caliber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were originally founded by people who were geniuses. And this was also back in the days, well, actually the very first ones, I think, go back to the 1930s. And then there was a big explosion in them in the 1980s. So in their early days, they were also in operation when the economics and the geopolitics and the military events weren't so important. So you could have a genius in finance who would be able to operate a hedge fund and do extremely well. But now you need a much larger set of understandings than most hedge funds are likely to have. These managers they don't have the background. That's all, and they are therefore pretty mediocre talents, and they produce mediocre results.
Joined by Richard Maybury. He is the publisher of U.S. and World Early Warning Report. Richard, there's just been a lot of damage done in the commodities market, and you talk a little bit about that in your newsletter. We have the Rogers Index down about 40% in the last 3 years, and if you look at precious metals, the S&P Precious Metals Index is down almost by the same amount. What's going on in commodities, and do you see it turning around soon?
Well, I think what's going on in commodities is pretty much what's been going on in practically everything, which is it's all being driven by fear now. I think all the movements, there is some of it that's driven by greed, but mostly by fear. And people, they wake up every morning wondering what they should run away from. And the commodities, because we've been in recessionary conditions since 2007 or 8, the demand for commodities has been weakening, and I think that anytime people see weakening demand, then that catches their attention and they run away from it. And I think it's a well-established fact that prices in the markets usually overshoot either on the upside or the downside. And I think right now they're overshooting on the downside because the fear is so great. And that makes the commodities, including the precious metals, in my opinion, a very, very good long-term bargain. I'm not saying you can buy them and 3 days later sell them and make a fortune. I'm just saying that if you buy them and hold for, let's say, 5 years, I think you are going to feel really good 5 years from now about your decision to do that.